Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hattrick's Unofficial Flyers podcast. This is Rick Mullen. I'll be your host tonight. And we had taken a little bit of a break. We decided not to post a episode after game 3. And then we figured we were going to wait until the end of game 4 to kind of post a podcast here about the series. So let's talk about the series for right now. The Flyers got swept in 4. The Canes, they were a machine. They were an absolute machine. They were the better team, no doubt about it. The Canes are a team that have been built for the last few years to play in a certain position, a certain way, a certain system. They've had like what 5, 6 years, 7, 8 years to get this system down packed. Every year they added some players, took away some players, and this year it just seems that they landed on the right mix of players. The season's not over yet from a playoff perspective, so we don't know. Obviously if they've won the cup this year or not, but they definitely have a team that plays very, very well. They have 4 lines that roll. They have their second lines on fire. Anderson standing on his head. And the Flyers had a huge task to try to take them down with a very young team. And they weren't able to do it. I have some frustrations I'm going to talk about. I'm assuming there's a lot of fans out there. But I just want to say, I'm going to talk about things that have happened over these last 4 games. There's no way, shape, or form here that I want to distract from this year. So, and I'm not making excuses of why the Flyers lost. And I want to make that, loud and clear that the Flyers lost because they were not the better team. The Flyers lost because they couldn't score. And that's really what it comes down to. So I want to talk solely though about the refs in games this season, or this playoff series. So game 4 wasn't so bad. It wasn't too bad. That was probably the best officiated game of the 4 games that the Flyers played the Canes. But ultimately over those first 3 games, it was infuriating to watch those games. The refs were terrible. They should be ashamed of themselves. The NHL needs to do better. Missed calls, phantom calls. It was just terrible. To me, it was just terrible. So I'm going to start off this podcast on a bad note, and then I'm going to go all good. Okay, from this point forward, for the most part. So let me get this out because I have to. It's one of those things that eat you up if you don't talk about it, and I want to talk about it. So I think these refs were absolutely brutal for most of the series. I think that hit by Hall and Sanheim when Sanheim was on his knees for about 10 seconds before Hall came in, targeted his head, and put it into the boards was an absolute disgrace that the officials called a 2-minute penalty on it, and that was it. It was an absolute disgrace. The refs were brutal. They called penalties one way. For those first 3 games, they did give the Flyers a couple, but for the most part, the Canes were dirty. They were very dirty. They did a lot of things from their goalies tripping our players to slew footing to boarding to high head hits, spearing, all kinds of stuff, man. And the refs didn't call anything. It drove me nuts watching those games. And then you get into, I think, was it the 3rd game where the refs try to basically determine the outcome of the game. They were calling all kinds of stuff that was weak and missing the big ones. And it hurt. I mean, it basically, the refs made the game or the outcome of the game. It wasn't the players determining the outcome of the game. It was the refs stepping up and losing control of probably game 2 and game 3 and not knowing how to get out of it. They just kept calling penalties and just putting people in the box. There was no play. There was no rhythm. It was like basketball. You touch somebody, you were in the box, for the Flyers. So I think the refs had overstepped for game 3. I think they were really, really weak, really weak. Game four was much better. There were some missed calls, but overall, they let the teams determine how that game was going to go for the most part. So I think game four was one of the better officiated games. So anyhow, that's my rant about the refs, and I know there's going to be some ref fans out there that are going to say, "You can't blame everything on the refs." Da, da, da. Well, you know what? I played hockey all my life. I got hurt pretty badly. I couldn't play anymore on my right hip when I was 40, 42. I had to stop playing, and I thought, man, I have to stay in this game some way, shape, or form. And I did go to took ref classes. I went out. I refed, I think, for a year or two. That was it, no more than 2 years. And so looking at it from a very meager refing experience on my own, you just don't want to see the refs call a game one way that's going to affect the outcome of a game in the playoffs. If you have to eat one of those games here and there in the regular season, okay, you eat it. But when you get into the second round of the playoffs, you don't want the refs being a determining factor in a series. And they weren't. If the refs put their whistle away, I think the Flyers still would have lost, obviously. But they did. They did hurt the Flyers a lot during this series. Those first three games. Let's say the first game the Flyers choked on their own. This game 2 and 3 though was an absolute brutal showing by the refs. So anyhow, with that said, I'm done ranting about the refs. Let's move on, and I got that out of me. So listen, I want to thank the Flyers organization as a whole for this season. This season was fantastic. It really was. The Flyers were playing fantastic up until January. They had a really good system. There was a lot of drama with Matvei Mishkov, who we're going to talk about later, and Rick Tocchet in the beginning of the year. That all the fans were and reporters and media in this part of the country were talking about, and it was ugly. That part was ugly, but the Flyers as a whole were playing great. They were taking steps. They were starting to gel. They were trying to learn Tocquet's system. We get into January, and the Flyers can't win. They go on a losing streak, and they're falling out of the playoff race, which they were in before that wild card spot. And then they go and what do they have? 3.8% chance, right, to get into the playoffs down the stretch, and the Flyers tear it up. They absolutely tear it up the last 20 games of the season, and they do everything possible to land themselves a playoff spot, a third place in the Metro, and they got into the playoffs. And we went up against our arch enemies in the Pittsburgh Penguins and Cindy Crybaby Crosby, and the Flyers were able to beat them, knock them out of the playoffs. And these Pittsburgh fans are so butthurt that they're still all over the internet, like talking about raising the banner. The Flyers won against the Pittsburgh Penguins, raised the banner. And then when we got swept, they're all over the internet again, picking on the Flyers fans. So, it's really good to see that we are living rent free in the minds of all these Pittsburgh Penguins fans. And nothing could be better than to know that. So it was an absolute sweet victory to beat the Pens. To watch Dan Vladar with his magical play this year, and it was magical. The guy was really good, and he's such a good guy. He's such an inspiration to the team. Really, really hoping that Vlad can do a second year here next year and perform the same exact way. Couple things I want to talk about. When you look at this year, and we're going to kind of talk about some things in reference to probably the one thing that sticks out the most, which is Matvei Mishkov, right? Like Matvei Mishkov was terrible. No doubt about it. He was terrible in the playoffs. He had 1 point in, I think, 8 games, and that's not enough. That's not enough at all. Rick Tocchet felt all year from his actions that Matvei was not really a go-to player for him. Not at all. Even when Matvei was coming down the stretch in the last 20, I think Matvei actually led the team in points in the last 20 games of the season, and he was a huge piece of why the Flyers got into the playoffs. And then when we get into the playoffs, Maffei's like barely playing, barely playing. So let's talk about a couple things about Maffei. So, it's important to view things in a bigger picture. So if you look at 21-year-old Nathan McKinnon, he had 53 points that year. Kucherov at 21 years old had 65. Caulfield had 43. Suzuki had 41. Connor had 57. Mishkov had 51. 51 at his 21-year-old season. These points don't lie. He's absolutely contributing. He's doing really well. He's on a good trajectory. And yes, he has problems for sure. But let's look internally at Matvei Mishkov. So Matvei Mishkov played 20. I'm sorry. Matvei Mishkov had 20 goals this season, 31 assists. He was a +0. He had 71 penalty minutes. He had 163 shots, and he only had 14.5 in time on ice. Owen Tippett who's 27 years old. Owen Tippett had 28 goals, 23 assists. He was -6. He had 32 penalty minutes. He had 22 shots, and he had 16.5 time on ice per game. They both, Owen Tippett and Matvei Mishkov, finished with 51 points this season. 51 points. And Tippett had more time on ice, and he also had, I believe, power play time, which Mishkov didn't have much. So when you look at Mishkov's year from a stat perspective, Maffei's doing really good. Maffei was part of the reason why the Flyers got to the playoffs. And Matvei had to fight through all kinds of adversity to put those numbers up. Tippett, TK, who we'll talk about as well, they had some really good ice time. They had some really good lines. They had much better line mates than what Matvei has had. Matvei has been benched. Matvei has been held out of the lineup. Matvei was not giving much power play time. When Matvei was given power play time with Zegras in the beginning of the year, they performed pretty well. Again, our power play is terrible, but they did better when he had some regular strength points with Zegras and some other players. But Matvei ultimately was held to playing with Cates and oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the other guy. Like my bad. So he's not getting the same line mates. I can't for the life of me remember his line mate. But for the life of me, I can't believe I'm not remembering this guy's line mates. But Cates and Mishkov, and he would have somebody on that third line, like maybe like bump towards the end of the year. But it wasn't good line mates, and it hurt Maffei not getting good power play time, not being on the top line. And you think about this, and in reality, what's Matvei really good at? Matvei's very good at passing, seeing the ice, creating some plays. And you would think he would have been on that top power play unit, especially with the top power play unit not performing well. Just not doing well in any way, shape, or form. You think they would have said, okay, look, we need a guy. Let's give Matvei this opportunity. And this goes back to like where my head is thinking that maybe, Tocchet is just so adamant and not about giving Matvei Mishkov the opportunity because he didn't deserve it in Rick Tocchet's mind. Does that make sense? Because it's the only reason I can think why he wouldn't play him there, right? Like it's kind of like you know what? Hey, you don't back check hard enough, so we're not going to reward you with top power play minutes. And I think that was it. I really do, because if you look statistically at holding Matvei out versus putting Matvei in on that first line, everything statistically says that line should be better. So why wouldn't you do it? If statistics matter, which they do, because everyone's looking at your power play saying it sucks and they got to do something. But if it matters, which it does, again, Why wouldn't you give that a whirl? Why wouldn't you try Matvey Mishkov out there on that first power play line? But he doesn't. He doesn't give it to him. He didn't give it to him at all. And Matvey had to earn his 51 points with limited ice time and benchings. So I'm going to give kudos to Matvey Mishkov for doing what he did his second year with all the obstacles that he had around him. And I'm also going to, say, hey, Matvey Mishkov came into this season out of shape. He didn't take it seriously. And I know he learned his lesson. We learned his lesson. He doesn't want to lose. He wants to produce. He wants to play. He gets upset and mad when he's not. So I know he learned his lesson. Tocchet sent that message loud and clear. The organization sent that message loud and clear. And I'm sure it will never happen again. Now, with that, Rick Tocchet has to learn to move on. And I'm going to talk about Rick too. So I'm not picking on Rick here, but Rick Tocchet needs to learn how to move on here too. Yeah, he definitely was upset with Matvey. You know it, and he still probably is, but he needs to move on. You need to look at the team as a whole. You're part of the team, even as the coach. And what can you do to make this team better? And everyone on the ice is asked to put everything on the ice that they can to make the team better. And the coach needs to do the same. And I do think putting Matvey on the first power play unit, giving them time to try to figure out if it will work, not just put them on there for a game and move on, but giving them time to see if they can figure out how to make it work is what Rick Tocchet needs to do as a team guy to put everyone on the ice that has the best opportunity to score on that power play. And he didn't do it with Matvey, and I think that was absolutely a bad decision for Rick Tocchet. No doubt about it. Rick Tocchet chose not to put Matvey on that line, and it hurt them all year. So that was Rick Tocchet's downfall. Rick Tocchet's win this season, right? Like what's a plus. I really truly was stressing over Rick Tocchet in the beginning of the year. I was kind of excited to have him. I was waiting to see what he was going to do, and how this team was going to respond. And in the beginning, I wasn't sure. And then watching some of his line combinations and what he was doing, it didn't make any sense. And we were all like, oh, God, we picked a bad coach for this team. And I don't think he came off in the beginning as a good coach. But as he, muggled his way through the season, he really earned a lot of respect from me for what he was able to pull out of this team, how he was able to get buy-in from those players, for the majority of them. Again, I'm not going to go backwards on the Mishkov thing. That's an open wound on him, the one tick mark, I would say. But his system worked. His ability to pull the best out of this team worked. And I give him kudos, and I'm looking forward to next year. And now he knows what he has. He knows where he's missing. The offseason's going to be hopefully pointed at the holes this team has. Danny Briere needs to get out there, figure out what Tocchet needs, make some hard choices, and plug some holes here. And I think this team did fantastic. And I think Tocchet did really well coaching them, and he got everything out of them that he could. So I just wanted to thank the Flyers organization from Keith Jones, Danny Briere, Rick Tocchet, all the way down to every player on the Flyers team, to Vlad for standing on his head. This was the best season in a very long time. As a lifelong Flyers fan, I've been watching since like 1974, and man, this was the best season in a very long time that I've been able to watch the Flyers and go down to playoff games and cheer and watch them knock out the Penguins. And it was great. I had so much fun. So thank you for such a great season. I mean, all the fans, thank you. The end of that last game when the Canes scored on us, and within like 5-6 seconds, the fans in the place exploded in "Let's go Flyers" chants and cheering the team on, even though we just got swept in 4. That just goes to show that the fans are behind you. The fans saw what you all did this year. The fans were happy. The fans were very emotional at that game. They were happy, and they wanted to show love for our Flyers. And man, I had goosebumps listening to it. It was tremendous. And I hope they all know that we appreciate everything they did this year. So let's move on a little bit, because there's going to be a lot of things happening, I think, this summer. If we look at TK this year, and this was tough. TK, TK played what 31 playoff games in his career, and TK was one of the ones that came on in his interviews saying like, "Hey, I'm just so tired of losing. I'm so tired of losing. I just want to get to the playoffs." And he gets into 31 playoff games in his career so far. And TK had 2 goals and 10 assists in 31 playoff games. And he's looked at as probably our heart and soul on this team. And yeah, he had a good assist, on the bump play the other game and tying that game up. But all in all, TK really didn't play real well. And he knows it. We all know it. Media talked about it. But I worry. I worry. There's like a common thread here of, do we have the right people? And give you an example. Sean Couturier was asked to be a number one center, right, for the last couple of years. And Torts didn't, I don't think he liked Couturier in that position. And they had a pretty bad relationship. And then he comes and gets fired. Taki comes in. He's still using Couturier as his number one center. And then through some games, finally, they have a talk with Couturier about, you're just not that player anymore. We need to change your role. We need to move you down in the lineup, and this is what we expect from you. And in all honesty, you can either, because this was talked about in the media, you have 2 choices. You can either sulk and drag your feet and be a detriment to this team and yourself, or you can accept your new role, help these young kids learn, give it all you got, and show what a true leader was. And Coots did. I mean, Coots went out there and he played like a young man. I mean, Coots was banging everything that moved. Coots was one of our best players. If Coots was able to get the puck down low, he was the only one with his big body that was able to actually hold that puck deep and defend the puck and try to find some plays. And, I'm not saying he's Eric Lindros, but that was a lot of the stuff that the Lindros era did. Like, they were able to get in the corners and defend the puck and shield it, like Yager, right? Yager did it too. And finally, some trailers coming in, and Coots was the only one that actually able to do that. Everybody else, they tried and couldn't. Like, they would go around the boards and just get pressured off the puck, and Canes would take the puck and get out of their zone. So it would be nice to have a couple bigger bodies that are like kind of have the ability to do what Coots did and keep that puck down there and maybe create a cycle play down low and get some of the pressure off our end and keep the puck in their end a little bit more. So Coots was actually able to step up, accept his new role, and he played that new role incredibly well, like incredibly well. So looking at TK, he makes me nervous because I don't mean, what's TK, like 30 now, right? We know what he is. He's 29 or 30. We know what he is at this point. It's not like he's 24 and we're not sure what he's going to turn into, right? But he is what he is at this point. And could he get hot one series? Sure. But history and everything's telling us that TK is not really going to carry this team on his back, if that makes sense. He's just not. He's a small contributing factor on this team through the playoffs. And what do we do with him? Like, there was talk about maybe trading TK, but obviously TK would have to accept that trade. But can you trade him? I don't know. Is that somebody we want to move off the roster? I don't know. But like looking at it, like with big glasses on, that's a lot. It's a decent amount of money we're paying him, and we're asking to be a first line winger, and he's not performing like a first line winger. So we're going to bump him down the lineup too. It's a hard decision. You have to really see what you could get for him, and trying to make a trade for anybody. Like, if we're looking at a number one center for this team in the offseason, we're going to have to give up something to get something, right? And this is where it gets hard, because I don't think anyone wants TK. Like say we go after Robert Thomas. Robert Thomas is 26 years old. Why would the St. Louis Blues trade Robert Thomas to us for a 29, 30-year-old TK with a really high salary? Like, I just don't see something like this happening. Obviously, they're going to want a Martone, a Mishkov, things like that. Our number one pick. TK. I don't know if he's going to be able to be moved for that piece, but I also don't want to get stuck in a, position here where you have to use TK as a starting winger when he's not really a starting winger. He's not. He's like Couturier here. Like TK is not who he is or we want him to be. TK should be further down the lineup and different people should be in those top spots. You look at Trevor Zegras. I like Trevor Zegras. I really do. I think he's a good kid. I think he's got definite skill. He's fast. He's creative. But he's soft. Like he's soft. These playoffs showed how soft he was. Yes, he got a goal there against the Canes, but he's soft. Like he doesn't really hit. When he does, it's not even a hit. It's like a little push, like a little lean, and that's it. And he's just soft. He's not going to be, I don't think, in my opinion, a game changer in the playoffs. He's going to be a good contributing factor with the right people in his line. But when you have guys like TK and Denver Barkey, Denver Barkey, they're flying into these corners trying to put forechecking pressure on the Canes defensemen. And regardless how big those defensemen were, TK's smoking the guy on the glass. And we all know that. He's a rat, right? That's what he's known for here. But Denver Barkey, who's like 125 pounds, soaking wet, he's doing the same thing. Like he's 5'7", something like that, right? And he's going in and he's hitting hard too. Zegras is not. Zegras goes in and you see he lines up the player, but then he won't hit him. Like he won't hit them hard. He doesn't go in there hard. He's afraid of contact, and when he gets contacted, he gets mad. He starts losing his mind a little bit, and he gets all flustered. And I think that's why Tocchet was fighting with him the other day, during the game, like telling him to calm down and pay attention to what you're doing. So I don't think that Zegras is a center. I really don't. He's not the center, in my opinion. He's definitely a winger, and I think we need to adjust the team a little bit in this offseason. And I don't want them paying a huge amount of money to Zegras. I don't want to see him walk either, obviously. But, to me, Zegras is not a $10 million kind of guy. Sadly, I think with the salary cap going up and Danny, I think, worried about maybe losing Zegras, right? I just think they're going to overpay him. And then you're going to have Couturier overpaid, Zegras overpaid, TK overpaid. That's hard. That's hard. You got to get these salaries in check. And the players that aren't able to continue to earn the salary you're paying them, you got to figure out what to do with them. TK's close to that right now. Again, he's not quite in our window of the money we're spending for the production that he's producing at. And when you look at Sean Couturier's line, and this is where it gets, to me, it's kind of, going back to the old, size matters, and everyone fights about that, size versus skill, right? Hopefully you can find a guy with size and skill. But when you look at the Couturier line, forechecking and getting in there and throwing those big hits, they were able to actually hold the puck deep. They had some good time on ice, down in their zones. You have a TK coming in and, he's throwing big hits, but he's small. Like they're absorbing the hits and they're just getting the puck out of the zone. If you can get somebody who's better than Couturier and maybe has the heart of TK, but has some skills where he belongs in the first or second line wing, that changes the game a whole lot. If we can get our first line to be able to be big and control the puck in their end, that takes a lot of pressure off our D and Vlad, and that makes a big difference in games, huge difference in games. You saw that during the Lindros era with John Leclerc. He's a big body, and Lindros obviously, but keeping that puck low and being able to cycle. Even Yager, big body, he was able to defend the puck with his body and cycle. That game still exists. You see McKinnon doing that a lot, and it's just, I know, yeah, he's a freak in nature, right? But there's a lot of teams that are bigger, and they actually do that. The Canes were actually not a small team, and they were doing it to us a lot. Their passes were very good, and their cycles were very strong. But the Flyers have really no cycle. It was like get the puck in, get the puck and pass it, and that would be our only shot, and we were out. But Coots' line, again, Coots was able to actually defend with his body and actually hold the puck in corners and try to get that to his line mates. And that's where I think, like, if you were able to move a TK and get maybe a little bit younger of a guy who's a little bit bigger with maybe they're like the same stats roughly, that would be a win. That would be a really big win for the Flyers. We need that size. Um, yes, Porter Martone, Big Marty, he's going to be a fantastic player, and that's why I transitioned over to him because of the size thing. He's a big kid. He's strong. This was his first season, and it wasn't even his first season really. He put what he played 20 games. Um, he's going to be one of those people for sure, hands down. Tyson Forster, he's going to get stronger too. He's a big body. Bump, he's a big body. So they're definitely getting there with the size. These kids just need a little more time to grow, and they need a little more time to refine their game. But we're going to have those bodies for sure moving forward with these kids. But at the point in time where these kids are able to do all this, which is probably going to take him a couple years. TK is going to be what, 31, 32 years old possibly, and he's smaller and he's not producing well now. So I'm assuming he's going to go at the same level or worse, and I'll have a fluke year here and there maybe, and hopefully he does. That would be great. But TK needs to be, in my opinion, moved down the lineup or maybe moved out if they can for somebody with a little more upside and somewhere more into the targeted range of age that this team's based on right now. But lots of going on, man, in this Flyers world right now. You look at this and you think, okay, how did it get out of the conundrum of keeping the same lineup next year? Because it's really hard. I mean, it really is. I think this is going to be a really hard year for Danny Briere. You look at all these kids that are coming, and we have a lot of kids. We still have these centers. Again, they have room down in the Phantoms for them for at least a year. But you have so many kids that played really well, and they look like they're going to be really good players for us. And you have holes too at the same time that you have to fill. And if you keep a TK, you keep a Coots, and you have to get rid of a Bump or a Mishkov to fill a hole, you may have just stayed status quo. You know what I mean? Because you got rid of one or two good young kids that were doing well for one, center, let's say, but you still have your other guys on this team, like again, your TKs, and it's not it's not a good position to be in. The best thing to do here would be to keep your kids because you don't really know what they have yet. Move your TKs if you can. Move, your Grumstroms, your Gerbankins, like those kinds of players, your Garnet Hathaways. Yeah, no one's going to give you anything for them, but you need to figure out a way to not give up on a Bump, a Bonk, a Martone, a Mishkov, probably, right? I mean, honestly, if you look at Mishkov, and it's a little scary because Mishkov is like this unknown. He's an unknown, like Bump and Martone. They play a very good defensive game. They try real hard. They're good on the boards. They have a hell of a good shot. And then you have Mishkov, who's slower. Can he work on that? Sure. And I'm hoping he does. I'm hoping he goes through skating classes and power skating this offseason. He gets a lot better for next year. But you look at just like basic plays that Mishkov makes. And from an offensive perspective, he sees the ice very well. He creates plays with his passing. His passing will get better. There are times where he sees the right play, but he throws a weak pass instead of a hard pass, and it gets picked off, and he turns the puck over. But the play was there. And, Tockett's talking about being creative and, in order to get better. And Mishkov's probably the most creative player on our team, hands down. But with that creativeness, there's also high risk. In order to make a creative play, you have to go against the grain and force something a lot of times to be creative. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. It's a turnover, but as you get to be a better player like Kucherov, you learn to make that plays better. You learn to make that harder pass or when's the right time to throw that pass. And that's where Mishkov is trying to get to. And he has that ability. What does Mishkov not do? Well, and Mishkov is absolutely horrible at playing defense. Like horrible. He takes he takes the complete wrong angle on bodies. He He really does. Like, I've never seen someone as bad as him, and that's why, like, when Tocchet benched him, yeah, I was upset, but at the same time, I get it. I got it. I understood it too from a defensive perspective. Um, but there had to be like a give and take there. Like, if you knew he was a bad defensive player, but he's probably one of your most creative forwards, then don't play him a lot during the game. But when there's a power play, throw him out there on the first line. You got to learn how to use your players and not bench them. You know what I mean? Like, when you have a guy like Mishkov, he should have been on that first power play unit all year, hands down. He should have been out there. Um, so that's my only like kick at Tocchet. Like, he could have made that first power play unit probably better, putting Mishkov on it, and then limiting his defensive time on the ice. And that's where I think he did a disservice for Mishkov and the first power play. But when you look at Mishkov again, getting back to him, his defensive play is horrible, like horrible. Like, he doesn't really know when to hit. When he does hit, he doesn't put his body in the right position. I guess the best way I can explain it without like actually doing like video is he's in his end of the ice and there's a skater coming down the boards. What most players will do is they will get in front of that player and pinch him off against the board so that you can't get through him. Like, they're also blocking the middle of the ice. So it's like you have your you have your shoulder on the player and you're squeezing them against the boards, and you also have your other shoulder like on the guy's side so he can't jump across the center of the ice. And you basically pinch him off, and that's it. Plays over. A guy loses the puck most of the time. Instead of doing that, Mishkov will just hit the guy from the side and not pinch him against the board. So these guys are stronger than Mishkov, and most of the time, the guy just goes right down the boards past Mishkov's hit, or they knock Mishkov over and keep going past Mishkov's hit. Or Mishkov is just about to hit him, and instead of hitting them and getting in front of them so they can't get down the boards, Mishkov jumps around them because he's hoping the puck went to his defenseman in the corner and the guy's going to send him off on a breakaway, right? So Mishkov makes really, really terrible, terrible decisions on defense. He does. And I don't know if that's because he's always looking for that breakout, if it's because he doesn't like to hit, or if it's because he really don't know how to hit. He really doesn't know how to pinch a player off. And yeah, I mean, for us, I think that's like simple hockey 101 that you learn in juniors, right? Like, this is how you stop these guys. This is how you hit. This is how you defend. This is how you use your body to make sure they can't skate through you into your zone any deeper. Does Mishkov just not know this? Does he not know what he's doing? Like, does he really not truly understand that, yeah, he hit the guy, but he didn't hit the guy in the most beneficial way? I'm not sure at this point, because I think Mishkov wants to be on the ice, and I think if he wanted to be on the ice badly enough, he would do the things that he needs to do to stay on the ice, and he's not. You'll see him like light up a game after he comes back, and he still throws those weird angle checks. So I'm not sure. I think he needs somebody to really coach him on angles, like hitting angles and defensive angles and all that stuff, as well as power skating this offseason. That's his two biggest flaws. 100%, his skating and his angles on defense. So hopefully he gets some help and we see him play much better next year. But let's talk a little bit about the offseason again. How are the Flyers going to fix this team going forward? And I don't mean fix it, but how are they going to add to it to make it better? They have to be looking at upgrading their defense. But what does that look like? Do they go out and they get a Darren Radish? Do they overpay this guy who plays on a really good team who has a really good power play because the guy scored power play goals? Just because he did it in Tampa with all that skill of Kucherov and them around him, do we really think that guy getting paid coming here to our team would do that? I don't. Not yet. Not at this point. I don't think we have this surrounding skill. So I don't know if that happens. Do the Flyers look at trading Risto and bringing Andre out and Juleson out and just bringing Bonk and Juracek up and giving them the run next year? So not really upgrading our defense, sort of, right? I mean, Bonk or Juracek could be much better. We don't know, but it's not like we're going out and signing a Chris Pronger or something like that. So, like, would that move which it seems like it's going to happen. I mean, in all honesty, it sounds like Juracek's got to come up. If he stays, once he comes up, he's not waiver protected, so he's got to stay. So he's our seventh D man next year. So do you bring Bonk up and run that route? I don't know. Do they focus solely on bringing in a top center? And if they do, how do you get that top center? There's tons of rumors right now. I can't wait until the offseason gets a little deeper, into like July and August here, because there's rumors that Austin Matthews is available. Austin Matthews, right? I think Austin Matthews is 29 years old. He is a much better center than any player on the Flyers team right now. Any player. He's actually a two-way player too. He does block a lot of shots. My opinion, he has done nothing in big games. Would he be an instant upgrade for us? Yes, 100% he would. But what would he cost us? What would you have to give up? And how much of that salary cap would we be using for him? I just don't see that. I don't. And maybe it happens because the Flyers feel like they have to pull off a star move, and he's one of the only ones available. But I don't know. I don't really necessarily like Austin Matthews. I never did. I just don't think he brings much to his team when it matters most. He kind of disappears in the playoffs, and we already have that. We already have guys like TK who's not performing in the playoffs. You bring in another one. I don't like the Matthews pick. I wouldn't do it. I definitely wouldn't do it. If it happens, will I be happy? Yes and no. You know what I mean? I'll be happy he's here and hope for the best and hope he performs well, but I wouldn't do it. Robert Thomas, would I do that? Yes. Robert Thomas is 26 years old. He looked fantastic against Colorado towards the end of that year. If you watch those games with St. Louis, I mean, he was flying around Colorado. He was making things happen. He was one of the best players on the ice. He has that ability in him. But he's going to 100% cost you first-round picks. He's going to cost you probably Matvei Mishkov, hands down. Do we do that deal? I know everyone's going to say, yeah, you do that deal. You absolutely do that deal. I mean, you know it. Like, yeah, you have to. If you're getting a star center, like you have to. I don't know, man. Like, I would love to have him. Like, he's probably the one I would love to have, but I don't want to give up Martone or Mishkov or Tippett. Like, and we're going to talk about Tippett a little bit too. But how do you get him then? You got to give up draft picks, and St. Louis doesn't want that. They want players. We would have to give up some guys in the minors, and they really don't want that too much either. They want players. They want players now. So you would literally have to probably give up Matvei Mishkov in part of a package to get Robert Thomas. What else is available right now? I don't know. There's a lot of things that are probably going to happen once the season ends that, we're going to see other opportunities. There's talk about Connor McDavid not being happy up there, and he got 2 more years left on this contract. So there's going to be lots of different things coming up. And again, like, call me crazy, but I don't even like Connor McDavid. I think he's a puck hog. Like, I just think he tries to do everything on his own too much. And I think that with a lot of the other poor goaltending, poor defense that the Edmonton Oilers have is one of the main reasons that they don't win in the playoffs. I just think if you look at Crosby, and I hate that you look at Crosby, but if you look at Crosby, he distributes the puck very well. He can score goals pretty much at will when he was young, but he also distributes really well, and he uses his whole team. And that's what makes it better in the playoffs. When you have a guy like McDavid who's just trying to fly from one end of the ice to the other, and he skates past 4 of his players and tries to go through 4 or 5 of the other team's players, that's a puck hog. It's never going to work out. You need to use your team. Like, he needs to use his legs better. Like, get to this space, throw up, find some trailers, get to a next space so you can receive it back past to you. But he, in my opinion, just is way, way too much hogging that puck. So you got 2 big names out there who would cost a lot. It'd be a fortune to get them, and it would also be a fortune to keep them on a team, probably 14, 15, north of 15 million to keep them. I just don't think I do either of those 2 players. I look for other options. Who those options are, I don't know. But like I said, right, Robert Thomas would be the guy I would look for. I just don't know what you'd have to give up. And in reality, if Mishkov can come back, and this is where I don't want to get away from the Mishkov position too soon. If Mishkov can learn how to play a little more defense, learn how to angle his bodies on defense and play a stronger defensive game, and also increase his skating speed, we may do very, very well at Mishkov. And this is a totally different conversation at the end of next year. And I don't want to sell too short on Mishkov. I really don't. And this is like a really sad position to be in, because by the time if you need to get rid of Mishkov, the rest of the league knows too that you need to get rid of Mishkov, right? So his value drops. So right now, every team's looking at Mishkov thinking he's a young star. He's got a lot of upside. Yeah, he's not playing real well right now, but hey, he'll probably work out in the long run. I'm willing to give that a shot. Just like the Flyers were willing with Zegras and Juracek. Same thought process. Mishkov doesn't or isn't looked at as a flop yet. He's not. There's a ton of players or teams looking at him thinking he's worth a shot. And the Flyers have him right now, right? The Flyers have him right now. So you got to figure out with the right training, is this kid part of the future? And if you really feel like he's not, if there's like some internal things here that most of us fans aren't seeing and you need to move him, okay, man, I get that. And we'll never know, because they're not going to say, oh, we traded him because he was a problem inside the locker room. They'll just say, oh, we just felt, we really needed a number one center. And in order to get a number one center, you had to give up, to get. So we gave up Matvei Mishkov, right? I don't know. Like Danny and I think Jonesy are so entrenched on Mishkov right now that I would find it hard to believe he's gone. But looking after this year and what Taka did to him, makes you wonder, is Matvei Mishkov, even though they're saying he's untouchable, because that does raise his value, right? Is he really untouchable? And I guess we're going to find out in this offseason, because 100% any first line center we're going to get is either going to ask for Martone or Mishkov. And if we're not willing to trade one of them, we're probably not getting any first line center. So we're going to see how badly we will, or how much we will pay to get a number one center here, probably in the offseason. All right. So we're going to probably do a couple more episodes through the summer as the season winds down, with the Stanley Cup hopefully being done. We're going to look at those trade rumors later. We're going to go over like maybe some more players on our team and what the outlook looks like. But we're not going to do probably weekly episodes through the summer. We're going to really take our time here, look at what's happening on the market. Some good crazy rumors come up. We'll discuss them, from time to time over the summer. But we'll kick back off next year again when the season starts, with hopefully a better game plan, some more new bodies, and maybe some exciting trades that the Flyers do over the summer, be it through trades or offer sheets, if there's anyone out there to offer sheet. But this year, again, it was such a good year. It really was. The Flyers took some huge steps. They really did. It was really fun watching them play this year. And, at times you were upset when they were going through those losses in January. And then at the end of the year, they couldn't do anything wrong. They won everything they touched, and they got into the playoffs when it was almost impossible. The only team in NHL history to do it. 3.8% chance, and they got in. Unbelievable. So thank you to all the Flyers. Thank you to all the fans. We're looking forward to some really good rumors this summer. And until then, as usual, go Flyers.